Hello and welcome. Welcome to the Blessed Podcast, where we join Jesus where he's already at work, where we live, learn, work, and play. My name is Gary Kendall. I'm the founder and the catalyst for Love KC. It's a citywide ministry in Kansas City where we equip people to live on mission for Jesus. And at Love KC, we believe that every person should get to hear the good news of Jesus from a friend. So you may wonder, the letters bless, what do they stand for? Well, the first word is B, we begin with prayer. L, we listen to our friends and to God. E, we eat together. That's one of my favorites. S, we serve. And S, we share. We share our story and we share the story of Jesus. So as always, we have free resources at our website, lovekc.net. And you can go there to learn how to adopt your neighborhood, as well as to join any one of our online programs. I'm excited today to welcome our new host for this season 3 for the Blessed Podcast, Samantha Ling-Krebs. Welcome, Samantha.
Thank you, Gary. It's an honor.
Hey, I am so excited because you and I have been friends for a while, but a lot of my friends at Love KC don't know you. So today I get to introduce you to my friends.
Yay. Yeah, I'm excited. This is good.
Yeah. And for those of you who are joining in, Samantha will be the co-host for season 3. So we'll be doing a podcast every 2 weeks. And you can find those podcasts on iTunes and Apple Play, Google Play, and many other resources that are online. Probably any of your favorites, you can find them there. And then we also post on our Facebook page and our group, Love KC Today, Living on Mission. So when you go there, you'll find these podcasts. But before we dive into our other guests, Samantha, I want people to meet you. So let's take a minute and just tell us a little bit about what you want us to know about yourself and about Asian Expression. That's the ministry you lead. So tell us a little bit more about that.
Sure. So I am Chinese, and I was born in Hong Kong, but raised in Canada. So I'm Chinese Canadian, now living in the US. There you go.
Yeah.
I went to high school in England for several years. So if on the podcast you hear me say water, don't get too confused. So I might just offer you some water. So that's a little bit about my ethnic background. I guess you can say I'm technically a 1.75 Gen Chinese since I wasn't born in America, but most of my adult life, obviously teenage, adolescence, and up onwards was spent in the West. So Asian Expression is really, in essence, an expression of who I am, as God often does with our own stories. And we have been a part of YWAM, full-time missionaries, for the last 10 years. And never would I have thought that I would start my own organization. If you asked me, I was like, no, I'm good, But it was obviously like many other people's stories. It was through a series of events. But I think probably one big one that really propelled, I would say, the DNA or even vision for this was really learning and embracing my own ethnic identity as a Christian. And that came about when I heard an underground Chinese pastor share about 10 years ago about just the Chinese call for the gospel, beyond China through the Middle East, but also just his story of martyrdom sacrificial kind of way of sharing the gospel, you can say, being homeless, imprisoned, and all that, through which God really gave me a revelation of my ethnic identity, my inheritance as a Chinese, and what that meant in the Great Commission. And so really Asian Expression was birthed from that place of, I think, finally embracing in many ways who God has made me to be as a person, and plus obviously God's call to missions and all that.
That's great. I look forward to digging into that in just a moment. But I do want to say, I remember that when we first met, that we shared a lot about Hong Kong, because Hong Kong is a very special place. in my life. I think I've been about 17 times. And I know that because I counted them all. And
That's amazing.
yeah, it's such a special place. And also I've been to China that many times too. And I have heard the same kind of stories that you've heard, and met people who've been in prison, and met people in the underground church. And my life has been completely impacted and revolutionized by Chinese leaders, Chinese friends. And I'm so grateful. You can't go that many times and be exposed to such a vital faith and not really begin to live differently. So I'm very grateful.
Yeah, it's so encouraging. I think that's one of the things that I so appreciate about our friendship is both of our love for China and Chinese people. And that's something that I really treasure in our conversations. And I really love that how you really, not just because you went, but really you've kind of adopted us into your heart, which is phenomenal. I really, really, really appreciate that, truly.
So my friends called me an egg.
Yeah, you're totally an egg. Yeah, no doubt. You're a hard-boiled egg. You're absolutely yellow on the inside.
Yeah. That's what they said. Took me a while to know that was actually a compliment.
Yeah. You're like, wait, hang on a minute.
Yeah. Well, Samantha, when we talk today, and then in the guests that we'll interview, one of the things that I'm always curious about is what is it that clicks in a person's life when they begin to decide, hey, I really want to live every day on mission. Part of my conviction in starting Love KC was that so many people, when they go to church, they think that the pastors or leaders, like they get to do all the fun stuff. That's where the real Christian action takes place. And the longer I was in Christian ministry, the more I believed it was exactly the opposite. Now, hopefully pastors and leaders do get in on the action, but God wants the everyday people, everyday disciples to be able to be the ones who live on mission where they live, learn, work, and play. So when did that kind of click for you that, hey, God has a call on your life?
Yeah. So I think my missions call, you can say, to be full-time missionary, came when I was in university. And it came when I took a short-term trip to a Muslim village in the Philippines for several weeks. But I would say that, what you described though, about living just life in general on missions, I think it's kind of been something in my life, kind of in and out. But, I think where I'm feeling more and more like, yeah, this is quote unquote the way. And this is coming from quote unquote a 10-year professional missions life, And I think a part of that is before I was called to missions, obviously in university, we we try to share the gospel on campus and stuff. And then ever since being a full-time missionary, I think one thing that I've been struck a lot is that obviously not to discount the work that we've done, but really people's lives are changed in their relationship with God. It's a growing process. Typically is not a one-time microwave deal, right? So I think from that, I've seen through outreaches and many great things that we've been a part of and privileged to be a part of, where we've seen thousands of people in different nations come to know Jesus. The things that have really kind of been urgent on my heart, though, walking away from those things is like, wow, what's happened to this village 5 years since we shared the gospel? Are there believers there? Are there, like kind of what you said, the bless, process happening? Are there friends eating with them, teaching them about sharing with them and continuing that process? And so I think living our life fully, not just, on a short-term outreach or, my church has a one-day outreach to the inner city, I think is so crucial because really it's in the context of normal life that people need Jesus, actually.
Yeah, we always call it a rhythm of life. It's a lifestyle.
Right. Yeah. And so I think that's something that has really been pressing on my heart more and more. And that's one reason why I really love KC and what you guys are doing. I think is phenomenal.
Yeah. Well, you're a perfect fit. So I look forward to seeing how this unfolds. I wanted to
Yeah.
ask you, Samantha, as you think about, you know, the past and deciding on Asian expression, and even if you want to like lean into your YWAM calling, but what was some of the ways that you actually knew this is what God wanted? Like you're processing a lot, like we all do. Like I can do
Right.
this, but I can do that. What were some of the ways that you knew God was indicating, hey, I'm calling you to this? Because I think a whole lot of people struggle with that. It's hard to tell
Mhm.
sometimes our feelings from God's feelings. So,
Yeah,
how did you do to
absolutely.
discover that?
Yeah, for sure. I think the process for me was some of it was kind of logistical thinking. You can say, we were part of YWAM, we were really happy. There was nothing that we were unhappy about or feeling like, oh, well, we need to just start our own thing. But it was in the process of our call of reaching the Gen Z Asians, Chinese particular. And we were connecting with churches, working with young people, and just the thought process of like, okay, what are we calling them into? Obviously, um, Great Commission, engaging with the Lord, being passionate for Jesus, living for God, all of that was it. And then stepping back in the context of YWAM, then it was like, oh, then does it mean we recruit them into YWAM? What does that
Right,
mean? And that necessarily wasn't our intention. Our heart was really just to reach them and empower them to live for Christ.
right,
And so I think that was kind of like a seed, you can say, which I'm sure many people, I think, have seeds like that, where they have a thought like that. Wow, maybe it's, this could be something else. So I think from there we felt like, oh, maybe we would have to have another type of landing spot for them where maybe we can tell them. And initially we thought, well, we'll just maybe do like an online community thing where people can just stay in touch, and just kind of have community, have support. Um, and then out of it actually came divine appointments. That's what it was. We divinely met different Chinese, actually it was business people, but that sparked different areas of ministry that we saw we could do. And so I think different steps were definitely, kind of those God seeds that were given to us. And along the way, there were some divine appointments. And then one thing for me too is really just kind of sensing some, looking back, I wouldn't have said, oh, that was like God really clearly speaking to me. But it was just feelings of like, wow, I really see this need, or like in the, Gen Z Chinese youth, like their culture or needs in the way that they need to experience God. And I'll talk to young people and I can see, yeah, they were hungry for different things. And so it was kind of seeing the needs of the people that I cared about and that God called me to. And then kind of all, mix and match, blended together. And then you're like, oh, I guess this is what Asian expression is about. And I very much feel like we're still in many ways, even though we have some skeleton pieces, you can say, in many ways, so still, with the Lord, trying to shape, the details of it, trying to just go with Him as what He has in mind instead of, coming with our own, organizational charts and things like that.
right.
Um, yeah,
This is one of the ways that we connected because if I'm hearing you right, you had some promptings, you had some convictions, you had
yeah.
some people speaking words into your life. You were
Mm-hmm.
also hearing God through messages and other ways that God was speaking to you.
Mm-hmm.
And it kind of grew into, what you're doing now. And
Yeah.
one of the ways that I think what we're doing overlaps is that you're wanting to lead the people in your life, your sphere of influence, I often call it, into
Mm,
living daily with Jesus, following Him, living on mission. I
yes.
often call that like kingdom of heaven living.
Yes.
In the days before Jesus, and he got in trouble for this all the time with the Pharisees. He was talking about the kingdom of heaven is here. Like
Mm-hmm.
your way of following God is not a tradition. It's not
Mm-hmm.
just something that keeps a ritual. It's not just a path that other people will follow, but it's alive, it's active, it's living. The Holy Spirit's working in that person's heart. God is
Yeah.
speaking through them. They become the hands and feet of Jesus. And so when we began Love KC, our desire was we just want every single person to be very alive with
Mm-hmm.
kingdom of heaven living,
Come
and to
on.
understand that any day could be a day that God would use your voice to speak to a friend,
Amen.
God would use
Yeah.
your story to convict someone's heart, that God might use you
Amen.
as like an agent of transformation. And
Hmm.
God is only a prayer away, and everybody has
Amen.
access. So
Yeah.
I sensed when I talked to you and Ben, the first time we had dinner
Hmm.
together, I sensed that kind of conviction in your heart, and I've seen it play out over time. So I'm
Mm.
excited to introduce our people to your people.
Yeah, it's going to be great. I know. I'm excited to learn as well through this podcast with our guest, and from you. So yeah, you so respect and admire the things that you're doing. So I'm excited to learn. So
Thanks, Samantha. So, what are some milestones? Like, if you were to say, "Hey, in a 6 months, a year, a couple of years," like what are some of the things you're shooting for? And I completely get the fact when you say it's kind of still evolving and growing. Um,
mhm.
but I'm just curious, what are some of the things on the horizon? I've actually heard you talk about a few of them. So,
Yeah. So I think a few things that we're working on. We have kind of several projects on the way. I think some of the uh, smaller, I guess you can say, milestones would be, keep partnering with different churches that we've built relationships with over the last several years, kind of offering them more support and gateways of engagement, I think, with the youth and the Great Commission. So some of the things that we are wanting to partner with is equipping them to do short-term missions, but also helping them to navigate that and translate that into their everyday living. So it's not like, hey, I signed up for a missions trip, 2 weeks, great, ticked off my box,
right.
done for the year, yay.
Uh,
The other longer terms that we plans that we have is really kind of finding locations where we want to build long term. So one of them we've identified now is Armenia, and another one that I think we're really pressingly working on is England, where there's a huge immigrant of Hong Kong and Chinese people, and there are several others that we're kind of praying through. And so I think some of the milestones that we want to see is definitely the partnership with churches, uh, Chinese and Asian churches, of course. And then some of the partnering with the locations, but with like a local, whether it's a ministry or local contact where we can really partner with them over long term. Yeah, we're talking like, a decade or two, or, rather than kind of short term outreaches, we're wanting to kind of build something long term.
Yeah, that sounds exciting. I know that a whole lot of the Chinese, and we might, if we extend it to just Asian population in Kansas City,
Mm-hmm.
I've had a good chance to get acquainted with a lot because at our church we had a Chinese school, so
Right. Wow.
we knew hundreds of Chinese families. And then I've been to, I think, most of the Chinese churches in the city. And
Yeah.
what I've seen, and you can confirm if you think this is true or not, is that the Chinese people who are here are in this place where they're adapting and adopting American culture, and at the same
Yes.
time they're trying to hold on to, what is their own ethnicity, and so
Yes.
they're walking kind of this unique balance being between the two, and I
Yes.
feel like that
Absolutely.
you could be a big help in helping them,
Yes.
to do that, take the best from their ethnicity
Yes.
and apply it
Mm-hmm.
to American culture, but also we live in America, and so how do we as we say that in the Blessed podcast, we live on mission where we live, learn, work, and
Yes.
play. How do we do that?
Yeah. No, absolutely. And I think for the young people, the Gen Z, and obviously even college student age, that's something that is it could be a big fight or contrary kind of voices within them, the cultural conflicts that they feel. And so a big part of our Heart and Asian expression is really how to help young people walk out their identity really as a Christian, but really as an ethnic Christian in essence.
Right.
And like you said, be able to redeem our culture for the gospel, really. Yeah.
Love that. When I was in China, I'll tell you the things that stood out to me. So
Yeah.
I was really impressed by the way that the Chinese believers that we were with shared their faith. And
Mm,
for many of them, sharing their faith was they took a risk to do it,
mhm,
but they often talked to people who are around us. Like I remember one time very clearly, we were on a trip to see the dam in the
mm,
Yangtze River, and the great big dam, the huge one that provides
mm,
about a third of the power source for the nation of China.
mm,
And the woman who was doing our tour actually had to get in our van because she was with us for the whole day. So these Chinese believers just knew they had a captive audience. And so all day long, they were sharing their stories about Jesus. They were they were
mm,
asking her about her faith. And she was
mm,
very engaging. Like she was willing to have those conversations. And
mm,
then when it got to the point where they felt like she might be ready to receive Jesus, what they said is, Gary, will you share the gospel? Because they knew that was the line. If they crossed that line, then they could be in trouble. And
mm,
so I shared the gospel with her, and
mm.
she prayed to receive Christ right in our van. But that's
Wow.
just one example. They would witness to people who were the hotel clerks at the restaurants. They would ask people if they
Wow.
could pray for them. And all of
Mhm,
this was happening, at the risk of their own, in that day, they probably wouldn't have been thrown in jail, but they might have been questioned. They might
mhm.
have had some repercussions, but that didn't
Yeah.
stop them. And they were joyful. It wasn't like they had to do it; they wanted to do it. So that was one
Yeah.
thing. Another thing was, I don't know if I've ever been around more prayerful people. Like, prayer
Mm,
was like the lifeblood, the heartbeat for them.
wow.
Early morning times of prayer, late night times of prayer. And when they prayed,
Mhm,
they really got after it. And that was
mhm,
inspiring to me. And a third thing that I would say, and this could be the last one for today, but I was
mm,
just impressed by the way that they treated the people in the community, as it was much more like family. Like
mm,
I love the fact that we treat each other in America like a team or like a
mm,
community. But I would say in China, it was much more like family. And in fact, when
mhm,
I've come back, I want the Love KC team to feel like family. When I'm
mm,
working with people, it's just it's a different kind. It's a lifestyle. I felt like I was kind of seeing Acts 2, right in
mm.
front of me. We saw
Wow.
some healings that were, unbelievable, except for God. And I thought,
Mm,
if Chinese believers can live like this, why can't American believers live like this?
mhm. Wow, that's phenomenal. Yeah, I feel like there's so much I'm still learning from my own culture, but also, yeah, from, believers, Chinese believers. And I'm still digging into what God's showing me in terms of our gifts from our culture,
Right.
and what that means, in, yeah, being the body of Christ, in being a witness. And I do believe we have a lot of rich things to offer,
Yes,
um,
for
to
sure.
those around us. I mean, I think every culture does, not just the Chinese,
Exactly.
American.
I was just going to say the same thing. You took the word
I
out of my
know.
mouth, actually.
I didn't want to be like favoring Chinese culture only,
Right.
but
I mean,
I love
anybody,
all cultures.
yeah.
Yeah.
If you're
Yeah.
Hispanic, there's
Oh
a
yeah.
the
Yeah.
Latin the Latin
Yes.
culture, and we could choose any one of them. And you've lived in England, and
Yes.
so you should
Yes.
should know. Hey, I want to
Absolutely.
ask about your family. So
Yes.
you're a mom, you're a wife, and tell us a little
Yes.
bit about your family. And I'd especially like to hear, when you were getting this calling, how did you work that through with Ben?
Yeah. So I'm very blessed to marry to my husband, Ben, who's from Montana. So he's as white as can be, but he has a huge heart for Chinese and China, like yourself. So he's absolutely an egg for sure, 100%. And we have 3 kids, and they are beautiful, mixed biracial kids, which is amazing. I would say,
And you're
one
right,
of the,
they are beautiful and handsome.
yeah, and I'm really trying to help them to learn the both cultures as they grow up, obviously all within the context of Jesus culture.
Right.
Um, I would say, I think one of the biggest things that started, I think, for me to be able to even dream some of this which I'm really, really grateful for, to my husband. Is that he's very empowering and releasing of me as a person to my call. And I think that's been a vision that God has given him because of his love for Chinese and China. And we knew the moment that we met and we got married, our marriage was not just about, oh, love at first sight,
Right.
And so it's been a huge blessing. And I think over the different years, we've kind of juggled differently, obviously, like you said, being a mom and wife. And oftentimes, I've had a lot of background roles, being with kids and raising them, which is a calling in itself that I don't take lightly. I value that a lot. And I think it's very important, especially in the context of Chinese culture where, family's so huge, but just also the importance of family, as you know, in the gospel and all of that. But I would say though that I think a huge part of why I can do what I do is because Ben has been not only supportive, but just really empowering. So our process of kind of what I do or how he gets involved, obviously, is through prayer, but a lot of it is also kind of according to what God has called us individually. So for him, he actually worked in China for several years. I always say his Mandarin is better than mine, which is actually true. My Cantonese is better though. Um, so I think he's naturally has always gotten more of a heart for believers within China, and so that has been a huge part of kind of his prayer and focus. And for me, it's been a little bit more of the diaspora, those who've grown up outside of China, but with a Chinese heritage. So I feel like we really make a good team in, I think, hearing what the Lord's heart is for our people, like for the Chinese people as a whole, inside of China and outside of China, carrying different burdens and kind of understanding as he's lived in China actually longer than I have. I lived in Hong Kong, but it's not quite the same. And so I would say we kind of share, kind of our call, but we carry individual pieces that I think we already had before we got married. And so
Yeah.
it's been really fun. And I think in this season of where we're developing Asian expression is a little bit more focused on overseas Chinese, but our hearts is still very much also, reaching the believers inside. So I think God will have his time and ways to do that, and we still would love to, take our kids to see my homeland, whether it's Hong Kong, China, and let them learn more of their culture and roots.
Of course. I fully believe God will let that happen. Hey,
Yeah.
let's wrap up, turn toward home here, and
Yes.
tell the listeners why you're excited to be a part of the Bless podcast and how you think it fits with what you're already doing.
Yeah. So, yeah, truly, I think it goes back a little bit to a question that we discussed earlier, having been kind of in professional missions, you can say, for the last 10 years, I just feel like so many people are in need of encountering God on a daily basis, not at a special setting in a church service or even in like a special, outreach or, a special program that we're putting on. Um, and the other aspect that I see that I think having been in more of a missions field is I see a great need in the spheres outside of the missions world, as you can say, or the religious sphere where people really need Jesus. So we're talking about, like government, what education, right? Entertainment, and basically your everyday normal. Everybody gets, goes to a job, right? They go to college or they go to work or whatever. And I just feel so much more I just see more and more the need for that. Um, and it's really something that is really challenging myself as well, and I think that's probably where, joining the podcast comes in, where I feel personally challenged in the last several years to invest more in Kansas City myself, because this is our home. And would go to India and share the gospel. And then I just feel the Lord always poking in my heart. How about that Walmart run, How about when you're like, out eating, at Chick-fil-A or, or maybe another less Christian food chain.
Sure, sure.
Yeah. And so I think this is why I feel so excited to be part of this podcast, because I feel God has called me to really, live out life on missions here in Kansas City, even though our hearts are for Asia or Asians, but it starts really right here. And so I'm excited to be a part of this. I'm excited to learn from our speakers. I'm excited to, let people listen, I think, to other people like themselves, how God has used them and how God can use them. And I think in that we can really see God move in our city, even in our neighborhood, So I'm really grateful for the privilege and the opportunity. So
It's going to be fun. We'll have a good time.
yeah, it is going to be great.
So I want to invite you guys who are listening to subscribe to the Blessed Podcast if you haven't already. If you're on the Love KC, if you're on the Love KC Living on Mission page, you can hit subscribe and you'll see all of them there. So they'll be on our Facebook page and they'll be also on our group page. And so you can always find them there. But a lot of people like to listen on their phone while they're working out or going to the store or doing a variety of other things. So if you subscribe at iTunes or Google Play, then that's a little bit easier, sometimes Spotify. And so we have it on all of the major platforms. I do want to encourage you to share it too. So tell your friends about it and leave us comments. So when you're seeing it in the group page, you can leave comments and we'll also leave some notes. So if we reference a particular guest or we reference a book they wrote or we reference something that they referred to, you'll be able to check it out later. And so as we end today, I want to go back to where we started. We call it the Bless Podcast because of the letters bless, BLESS. So begin with prayer, start your day with prayer and give it to God and see what he'll do. Ask him to make your eyes open and your ears open to the people around you and to needs. Listen, because their words may give you clues of where to start. Listen to the Spirit too. And then eat or make time to just be with people. A lot of the best things that happen in the Christian life aren't necessarily planned, they're spontaneous. Jesus spent a lot of time eating with his disciples. Meals are a big part of the Old and New Testament. And then serve, like give yourself to others, and people will probably ask you why, and then you'll get to share your story. So that's the Blessed Rhythms. We encourage you to practice them and join us. You can find more information at lovekc.net. So Samantha, thanks. The next time we talk, we'll have another guest with us.
Yay.
Looking forward to it. You guys have a great day.